Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. Thanks so much for being here with us on this Wednesday afternoon. Maybe it's Wednesday evening where you are, or even Thursday morning. Whatever it is, we're just happy you're here with us. 2 great hours of programming today. Second hour, we got Carlo with us, and we're going to talk about purgatory. We're going to get real about purgatory, the reality of purgatory, any purgatory questions. If you are among our Christian brothers and sisters who say, no, there's no evidence for that, and I'm not buying it, well, the perfect hour for you to pick up the phone and call us. We'd love to hear from you. As a matter of fact, anybody can call anytime. First hour, our very good friend, Dr. Greg Popcak, here with us, has a brand new book out, came out just this November, Having Meaningful, Sometimes Difficult Conversations with Our Adult Sons and Daughters. Dr. Greg Popcak, thanks for being with us.
It is my pleasure.
Most people, I don't know, actually, I was going to say most people know you from, but I don't know where people know you from because you have all these different lives. You're the founder of the, and still the executive director of the Pastoral Solutions Institute. So you're doing all this real world counseling and stuff. Then you got the book publishing world, and then you got the radio program More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak.
Popcak Omnimedia.
Ah, yeah. You're your own media world, aren't you? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, my own empire. No, yeah, but no, people can tune in to More to Life that airs 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central on EWTN Global Catholic Radio. They could check me out at CatholicCounselors.com to learn more about the telecounseling practice and books wherever books are sold. So yeah, they might know me, but if they don't, now they do.
Now they can just call Catholic Answers too. Like at this moment, call Catholic Answers if you want to talk to Greg Popcak. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. All right, so you have, well, first of all, more than 20 books, but many of your beloved books are either, well, no, I'm not going to say either, but they're marriage type books. They're very helpful, practical. Like I remember the one with the, I think it's the 7% of people who are really happy in their marriage. You kind of do a book about how to imitate them and that kind of thing. This one about something different. And is it because your state in life is changing and now your kids are adults? Or what moved you to how parents can talk to adult children?
Among Us Press asked Lisa and I to do this book. And we do actually happen to have adult children who have gotten married and had kids in the last year. So that's fun. So now actually, we have a lot of parenting books as well. So we actually now have Catholic parenting books all the way from infancy through adulthood. So, and every stage in between. So there's Then Comes Baby, which covers the first 3 years, and then we have Parenting Your Kids with Grace, which is birth to 11, and then Parenting Your Teens and Tweens with Grace, 11 to 18, and now Having Meaningful and Sometimes Difficult Conversations with Your Adult Sons and Daughters, which is not just about having those conversations. It's really a parenting book for parents of adult kids. How do we have healthy relationships with our adult kids? How can we have influence in our adult kids' lives? How can we continue to disciple and mentor our adult kids in living Christian values in their adulthood? So, those are all tough topics. And we also talk about how to address concerns that you've got, whether that's about parenting or lifestyle choices that your kids are making or any of those sorts of things. Again, it's very difficult to have those sorts of discussions with adult children. The book kind of goes into how we can open those doors and really build relationship with our adult kids in ways that make them want to open up to us as opposed to kind of make them run for the hills.
That I'm really looking forward to because I wonder sometimes why it can become stilted sometimes in the conversations with adult children. I mean, here's my strategy that I just recently employed over the Christmas break. I invited my son to come fishing with me at the Colorado River, which is a 5-hour drive. And I figured 5 hours, something's going to happen. I didn't know how I was going to make it happen, but I figured something's going to happen, and it kind of did.
That's actually one of the things. Conversations take time. And so, creating points of connection like that, whether it's a one-off, experience like you were just describing, or even better, We talk about how to create rituals with your adult kids. And that's easier, obviously, when they're nearby. But even if they're across the country, now because of things like Zoom or Skype or other social media things, there are even rituals you can create across the miles that allow you to stay in touch with your kids in lots of different ways. But the main I think the main theme of the book, if you will, is, spoiler alert, is that a lot of times we try to have these meaningful and difficult conversations with our adult kids, and those conversations are too deep for the relationship that we have. That in order for a conversation to be successful with anybody, but especially with our adult kids, the relationship has to be deep enough to contain the conversation. So think of it this way, right? Imagine you got a gallon jug of milk, right? And you got a shot glass. And you're going to try to pour that gallon jug of milk into the shot glass.
Yeah.
And you make it, you got a mess because it pours all this. So then what we have a tendency to do is think, well, you know what? Maybe my pour was just wrong. I need to pour a little slower next time. And then but I still end up with a mess. And I think, well, maybe I should pour it all out at once. And then I end up with a big mess. And then I think, well, maybe I should spin around 3 times and pour it out backwards, and that's going to work. And people, we keep looking for techniques for having better conversations with their kids. They keep looking for communication techniques when the real problem is the glass is just too shallow to hold the conversation you want to have. So what you did with the example that you gave, you created a space in your relationship to contain more conversation, and it deepened it by creating that environment where that conversation could happen. And that's what the book really talks about, how to do that, not just in one-offs, but overall, how to make the relationship deep enough to hold whatever conversation you want to have. Because what you're going to find is that the depth of the conversation, if the depth of the conversation is deeper than the relationship, you get resistance and pushback. But if the depth of the questions equal or greater than the relationship, then you get openness.
Got it. That's very, very helpful. By the way, 888-318-7884 if you want to ask Dr. Popcak questions about having those difficult conversations with your adult children. 888-318-7884. Your call is very, very welcome. As I looked through the kind of the way you organized the material, and I see that it's a gardening metaphor, I'm both happy and daunted by that, because I think, gardening takes a long time.
Yeah.
So I hate to admit that occurred to me, but I wanted give me the 5-minute. But no, that's
right. Well, and look, I mean, anybody who knows me knows how ironic it is that I use the gardening metaphor, because I kill everything I touch when it comes to that. But I'm like you, I'm not the most patient gardener. And so I was kind of making fun of myself as I was writing the book, because I give this example of I use a metaphor where let's say you go to the gardening center and you buy a tree, right? And you just want to be able to prop the tree up against your house and have it start producing fruit. But no, you got to dig a hole. And you got to dig a hole that's big enough not just to contain the tree, but to let the roots spread out a little bit. Otherwise, the tree gets suffocated. Well, the same thing's true about our relationships with adult kids. We've got to make sure that the tree is the conversation, right? And a lot of times we just want to go have the conversation. Tell me how to have the conversation. Give me some communication techniques that will help them open up to my conversation. And then people get frustrated with us when we say, well, first you got to dig a hole. What do you mean dig a hole?
That's the way I felt.
A conversation. Yeah.
Right.
No, exactly, right? But when you don't dig the hole, the tree dies. Or if you don't get a big enough glass, then you just end up with a mess. So you've got to start by looking at, how do I cultivate this relationship so that whatever I have to say, will be received well. And the extra frustrating thing, and I apologize if I'm monologuing here, but the extra frustrating thing for a lot of parents is we feel like, I put 20 years into this relationship. I put 30 years into this. I put 40 years into this relationship. What do you mean cultivate the relationship? What do you mean dig another hole? I've been digging a hole for 40 years, for crying out loud. Why can't I just say what I need to say, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's because that at each stage of development, we have to kind of dig the hole a little deeper. And so a lot of times what parents will do is they try to have conversations, that require a much bigger hole with a hole that they dug when their kids were littler. I could have those conversations with my kid when they were in junior high or high school or maybe even college. But now, there's a whole other series of stuff that's a whole lot deeper, and maybe our relationship hasn't gone that way.
Yeah.
So you can't jump from just talking about the weather and current events to I need you to stop living with your girlfriend. It's too big a leap.
Yeah.
And so when parents try to do that, because we assume that we have that depth of relationship, our adult kids push back because we haven't expressed that level of interest in anything else that they're doing in their life.
Oh.
Why are we doing this here? Well, because you don't like it. That's why. So the only reason you're investing in my life is because you don't like it. And so they get defensive.
I hate when you tell the truth like that. You're always doing that.
Yeah, right.
Like,
It sucks, doesn't it?
All right, I got to take a break to recover from that session. But your questions are welcome. If you got questions about having those difficult conversations with the adult kids, 888-318-7884.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Are you ready to spread your wings? Wings is the weekly newsletter that's packed with exclusive news, program information, features, and updates of all that's going on at the Global Catholic Network. To sign up, go to EWTN.com, click subscribe, enter your name and email address, and you'll start getting your wings every week. Get your wings today. It's the weekly newsletter from EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest, Dr. Greg Popcak, with his wife Lisa, hosts More to Life mornings on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak. The name of that show, More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak, makes me so nervous about when you retire, because the next person that comes in, it's going to seem weird that it's called More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak, and they're the host.
I'm having like full body masks produced so they can just wear a costume
like a Mission Impossible.
Yeah,
Nice.
like that, or either that or a mask, like a Disney mascot costume. We haven't figured it out yet, but we're going to go with one way or the other. I think they'll both work.
The number is 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. You mentioned a moral thing. You're living with your girlfriend, and that's one. But the other one is the religious one, and and maybe it's just because we're Catholic Answers, but people often will. Like, as a matter of fact, one of the most, I ask this at local Catholic radio stations all the time. Do you ask people if they want you to pray for them? And they say, yeah. What do they want you to pray for? It's always,
my kids return to the faith. 95%
of the call at request for prayers is that my children will return to the faith. So under all of all the conversation, and you didn't go in this, but here's how to talk about politics. Here's how to talk about religion. You gave more general. This is how to have these conversations and to create the ground for these conversations to grow. But
but I do give examples.
Yeah.
I think it's important to start from first principles and say, in general, here are the ideas for how to have those difficult conversations, and then we give a lot of different case examples of here's how so and so had the conversation about religion. Here's how they had the conversation about cohabitation. Here's how they had the conversation about parenting choices. Here's
right.
So here's how they had the conversation about finances or irresponsibility or. So, we give lots of examples about how to apply those principles to different situations. But, the good thing is if you kind of learn these first principles, then you're able to use them for all the conversations you want to have with your adult kids.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah. So you can have that one, that one thing that you're. I sometimes feel like as parents we're like circling them, like I'm waiting for my opportunity to say the thing I've got to say. Maybe that's part of the problem too. Is they feel like we're circling them.
Yeah. Well, and one of the points I make in the book is, and we don't mean to do this as parents. We don't. But sometimes we turn our kids into projects by accident.
Yeah.
And the theology, St. John Paul's Theology of the Body talks about how people, have a right to be treated and loved as persons, not used as things or treated as things. And when we turn somebody into a project, we accidentally thingify them. And so they get defensive. There's a, God kind of built into us this sense that, hey, I'm not being treated like a full human being here. And so we push back to protect ourselves. And unfortunately, when we forget that our adult kids are actually people and they deserve to be treated as whole persons, and we end up accidentally treating them as projects because we become so obsessed with this one thing that they're doing wrong, or the many things that they're doing wrong, that the whole relationship becomes characterized by that. And then we get all kinds of defensiveness. So we think that, well, I'm just not speaking loudly enough, or I haven't said it often enough, so I need to try again.
Yeah.
And I keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and only more and more and more, and expecting to get a different result. And we all know what that ends up doing.
Why did I start again? I said just a few minutes ago, I hate when you tell the truth on these things. And then I started up again. And you said exactly the stuff I do. All right. I'm going to let somebody else have the truth revealed about their parenting. Ron in Buffalo, New York, listening on the Station of the Cross. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Gregory Popcak.
So, Dr. Greg, my question is, I have 4 children ranging from 16 to 32. And my oldest son, who's 30 years old, just refuses to talk to us whatsoever.
How long has that been the case?
With the other 3, but
when did that happen, and what was the trigger for it? Do you know?
It happened a year ago, and I think the trigger was that he canceled out on coming over for Thanksgiving last year, and my wife was rather upset because he canceled that morning. And he's had a habit or a history of not showing up to family functions in the past 3 years. Otherwise, we had a great relationship prior to that.
I guess I'm wondering, so when you say that in the past 3 years he had a history of not showing up for family functions, I mean, did what changed there? Why did he stop coming?
One of the things is he got married, and I think that may have had something to do with it, because since they've been married, he's been a little bit distant, and hasn't seen his 16-year-old sister in almost a year.
That's really painful. Did you guys like his? I guess was there any conflict with your daughter-in-law or anything like that, or any issues around the wedding? Maybe
nothing significant. We actually purchased your book, Dealing with Difficult People, and provided them a copy. We read a copy, and basically got no thank you. We're not interested in talking to you.
So no idea at all whatsoever with. Will they speak with your wife?
No.
And they've shut out your daughter as well.
My daughter, well, she lives with us and very rarely talks to the other 2 siblings.
So, I guess the first thing would be, when you, I don't know, how often do you try to reach out to them at all? Do you text them on any kind of basis, and what kind of response, if any, do you get there? Or do they tell you not to text them? Do they just ignore it?
If we text them, they tell us, we get some trite answer, no thank you, not interested. Sent them a letter right before Christmas saying, we apologize for hurting you or whatever you've done, but we've done. But every time we try to reach out to you, it doesn't seem like it's sufficient enough. And I don't know, we're at a loss. We just can't figure out where to go from here.
All right. Well, obviously, unless we can find some way to get you some new information, it's hard to know how to move forward. But what I would suggest is taking the long view on this. I would say that you want to start by texting regularly, just chatty things. Keep it superficial, keep it light, and say, I was thinking about you, I saw this, pass it along. I thought about you and I was praying for thus and such. We're thinking about you. How's this going? Just let them know that you're not going away. No, don't pester them, 20 times a day or something. But even if it's a couple of times a week, you're just keeping up some sort of contact, even if they ignore you, putting it in, just keeping it in there. If you have somebody who they do talk to, who's in the family, trying to use that conduit a little bit to get some information, have that person, ask, what is it, what's your beef with mom and dad, being able to go that route would be helpful. But if not, then right now we've just got to build some kind of relationship and letting them know that you're not giving up on them. If they ever do respond, I think I wouldn't lead with the apology necessarily. I would start by saying, listen, whenever you're ready to talk about it, we're ready to hear whatever it is that you need to say to us. We're not going anywhere. I understand that you're frustrated. It's hard for you to figure out what to say to us, or you're not. I don't know if you're afraid we won't listen or what, but we're here, as you've evidenced by continuing to text, continue to reach out to your wife as well. So when you're ready to talk about whatever it is that's getting in the way, we're here to hear it. And you just have to kind of keep that persistence up. And then, obviously continuing to pray, I'm sure, as I'm sure you are, to our Lord, and asking for St. Monica's intercession as well. But I think, between, the prayers and the faithful reaching out to them in a non-threatening way, it lets them know that whenever they're ready to talk, you're there to listen.
I mean, it was funny because they live about 4 miles away. They sent us a Christmas card this summer, this Christmas, saying that they're expecting and they're buying a house. When we reached out to say, hey, we'd love to hear more about it, the response was, well, we don't trust what you have to say to us. I mean, it's just absurd.
Well, clearly there's something there that they're not telling you about it. So, I would again, don't move right to the apology. At some point, when the opportunity presents itself, I would say, clearly you're trying to tell us something, and clearly you feel like we haven't been willing to listen to you. I promise you that we're ready to hear whatever it is that you want to say whenever you're ready to say it. We love you very much, and we're not going anywhere. Send that message, and then keep texting the chatty things, like I said, both you and your wife on a regular basis, and hopefully the door will open up in time. Thank you, Ron.
Ron, thanks very, very much for the call. We appreciate it. The number is 888-318-7884. Dr. Greg Popcak and his wife, Lisa Popcak, host mornings on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network, More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak. They have a new book, Having Meaningful, Sometimes Difficult Conversations with Your Adult Sons and Daughters. It's from the Word Among Us Press. Your questions for Dr. Popcak about having those conversations are very welcome here. 888-318-7884. We're going now to Pat in Tennessee. Pat, you there with us?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Greg. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Thanks for the call.
I had a shocking conversation with my son in October where he told me he stopped believing in Christ, and it had been going on for a while. He said he didn't tell us because he thought he'd be lectured instead of listened to. And he was raised, Catholic, homeschooled, went to a faithful Catholic college, so it was really shocking. He's 24. But then he told us that he's and did get engaged to marry a Catholic girl and wants a Catholic wedding. And, I've been praying tremendously for him. He's out of state, so I can't, meet him for lunch or anything to try to build a better relationship. I did apologize for, the fact that he felt uncomfortable and that we didn't listen enough. But at this point, I'm just trying to figure out if I should say anything. I believe Christ is essential to marriage. I've been married over 40 years. I don't see how our marriage can work without Christ, and I'm getting mixed feedback from others about how much to say to him. At this point, I'm just trying to love him where he's at, but I also keep thinking about things I could say about marriage, but I also don't want to turn him off by lecturing.
Do you know the girl at all? Like, do you have any kind of relationship with his fiance?
No, he met her at college, and it's 9 hours away. And we did spend time with her. She seems absolutely wonderful, and she is the one insisting on the Catholic ceremony and marriage ceremony. It's sort of surprising to us that she's agreeing to marry him when at this point he said it's been about a year or two that he's stopped believing in Christ and a God of love and mercy. And so I don't really know her, other than we spent a week with her after we graduated.
This is Cy, Pat. Can you hold on a couple minutes, because we got to just do a quick break, and then we'll come back with Dr. Popcak. Is that all right, Pat?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Hang on. Dr. Greg Popcak is our guest. The number is 888-318-7884. Right back with more. Most of us Catholic parents agree our number one goal in life is to pass on the faith to our children. But here's the bad news. Today's world has a million ways to steal your kid's soul. Don't be afraid, says Father Sebastian Walsh. God loves your children even more than you do, and He desires their salvation more than anything. In his groundbreaking new book, Always a Catholic, Father Walsh shows you how to cooperate with God to bring about the fulfillment of His will for your kids. Always a Catholic reminds us that keeping our kids in the faith is about the way we live our Catholicism in our own lives and as a family from day to day. Order your copy of Always a Catholic by visiting shop.catholic.com today, or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. It's free, and you'll have instant access to our daily broadcast, the schedule of upcoming shows, and you'll even be able to search the archive and listen to thousands of past shows. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. Pat in Tennessee is on the phone. Our guest is Dr. Greg Popcak. We're talking about his new book, Having Meaningful, Sometimes Difficult Conversations with Our Adult Sons and Daughters. It's available now from, what's the press again?
Word Among Us.
Word Among Us Press. And Pat's question has to do with her son, who raised Catholic and no longer believes in Christ, but intending to get married to a young woman who very much wants to have that Catholic wedding. Dr. Popcak?
Yeah. So, Pat, let me ask you. You said that they live 9 hours away, and it's hard to build a relationship. What kind of contact do you have with him?
Not very much right now. While he was in school, while we were paying for school, we asked him to call us every Sunday, and he did faithfully every Sunday. And but he said he didn't feel comfortable telling us about the struggle he was having with his faith. So we didn't know about it until October, after he graduated. So
did he ever say, I'm just curious, did he ever say, you said he doesn't believe in a loving, merciful God, that suggests to me that either something bad happened to him or somebody he cares about. Do you know what the background is there?
Yeah, I think there was when he first went to the school, he had, really when I hear the details of what happened, one of the people there was really emotionally abusive. Mm-hmm. so I think he was hurt badly.
And he felt really alone, and probably was praying, and God didn't help him out, and so he's not sure he believes in God anymore. Is it
right?
the short
Right,
version?
and then COVID didn't help, and he had some learning problems, so he lived alone.
Okay.
So
he's been through a lot in the last couple of years, and he's unsure how God fits into that. Right. So let me a couple of things here. I mean, one, I would really, you say, that he used to call you every Sunday. Would he object to you, texting him on a, kind of regular basis, even a couple of times a week, giving him a call just to check on, not to tell him about his, not talk about the religion stuff or his wedding or anything, but just to talk about him and what his life's like and be chatty and that sort of thing? Would he object to any of that?
I do text him, just say, how you doing, things like that. He usually doesn't respond. He's working a lot of hours now. He's never been a guy that would get on the phone and chit-chat for any length of time, other than he's a guy that, when he promised he'd call us every Sunday, he did. And but now he's working a lot of hours, and so I try to do that. I text him, and I call him. Usually I don't get an answer.
All right, and well, so I mean that's where you got to start, though. I think and in terms of how do you bring up these conversations? I mentioned in the book, kind of one out of, I mean, this is a ballpark, right? So you got to kind of read the room, but 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 20 times, you bring up the serious topic. Hey, what's going on with this, or even in his case, being able to say, look, it's pretty normal. It must have been really painful for you to go through that, but it's pretty normal to ask those kinds of questions, and it's not so much a problem that you're struggling with this. It's in my mind, I think that it's God wanting to take you into a deeper relationship with him, but it's really hard to figure that out, especially when you're hurting, and not try to lecture him, but really try to understand more about where he's at with that. But like I said, that's maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 times. The other 10 to 20 times just chatty stuff about what's in the news, things that happen in your life. You can even text little prayers. I think Lord, help my son know how much I love him. Help my son know that you're there. And let him know how much you love him in spite of all of this. You can. We in our family, when something goes on, one of my adult kids might say, thus and such happened today, and we'll text a prayer back. Lord, please bless my son and help him to, and we'll pray for each other by text. And one of the points I make in the book is, we have a tendency to say to our kids, well, would you mind if I prayed for you about this? And then we make it a thing. I just really recommend making Jesus part of the conversation. So, I'm talking to my kid about something and they say they're having a hard time. Well, first I empathize with them, and I'm really sorry you're going through that. Lord, please bless my son and help him with his job situation, or please bless my daughter with, So, and it's a 5-second thing, but then I go right back to the conversation. But they know that, the Lord is right part of that. So, as much as you can, keep up that texting relationship and there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, sometimes I really feel sad when you don't text back. It would really mean a lot to me if you'd at least respond to the things that I'm saying. Prompt him a little bit to build that relationship, because it's you're really describing a relationship that you feel deeply, and I'm sure he does too. But in terms of the conversations, they're not deep enough to contain the conversation you want to have here. So going deeper there, I think also finding ways to reach out to this girl, just in a chatty way, not in a friendly way, not to plot anything, but to build a relationship with her.
I've been afraid to where he'd feel like we were talking behind his back or something. So
I would just even text him and say, hey, listen, I'm really liked meeting her, and I would really love to get to know her a little bit better. Is it okay if I reach out to her too? And just get his permission on that. But I think you want to build a relationship there. I always joke, it's like the joke about, or not the joke, but Sun Tzu's thing about, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Well, keep your kid close and their boyfriend or girlfriend closer, right? So the more you can do to reach out to her, the better that is too. Just to kind of build relationship. All right, Pat.
Thank you. Thank
You
you
bet.
very much.
God bless you. Thank you. And there's more in the book, of course, as well.
God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. 888-318-7884, the number here. Dr. Greg Popcak, our guest. His brand new book, written with his wife, Lisa Popcak.
My life wife, yes.
Your life.
My wife for life.
Yeah, that wasn't a mistake. I meant to say that. The new book is called Having Meaningful, Sometimes Difficult Conversations with Our Adult Sons and Daughters. You can get it wherever books are sold. They do still sell books. 888-318. It is amazing. Yeah, although you probably could get there's probably electronic versions of it as well, huh?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, people, almost all publishers now, you got to do all the different versions. 888-318-7884. So the bridging the gap, trying to get those deeper conversations, it does seem like the primary thing you said. And listening to you talk to people, it's interesting to hear how you apply that in practical ways with folks, is about, digging and preparing the ground so that, this big tree can be planted and be healthy, this tree of a relationship with them. And as you said, as they mature, the ground needs more preparation. So if I'm getting the metaphors correct, but go ahead.
and that's and this is from the previous caller, I think it's a good example. It's really important that we're cultivating that depth of relationship with our kids all while they're growing up, because we have a tendency to think that if they're not squeaking, then they don't need oil.
Yeah.
Just a statistic for you. There was a study that came out just a year or two ago that found that most adult nuns, I don't mean N-U-N-S, I mean adults who don't have a faith, N-O-N-E-S, most adult nuns lost their faith between the ages 11 and 13. But because so few Catholic parents actually have ongoing faith conversations with their kids growing up, we think that because they're going to church with us every week, everything's fine. And then the kids go to college, and they don't have to come with us anymore. And then they stop going to church, and we think, oh, they lost their faith in college. No, they lost it 6 or 7 years before.
Right.
We just didn't know, because we weren't having those discussions. We weren't having those conversations about how God impacts our daily life. We weren't really praying together as a family. We talked about God. We had God habits, but we didn't actually have conversations about how God was moving in our lives and how we as parents were dealing with the difficulties that we were encountering and how God showed up for that, and having those kinds of conversations as a family that really set the stage for the kinds of conversations that, for example, Pat wants to have with her son now. So you're having, if you haven't done that before, then you need to start building all that now. If you're listening and you've got kids who are younger, start having those conversations now so that you can have those discussions, make those discussions easier to have later on.
Again, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. I have to say something that you said in a conversation that we had probably years ago on the air here. What was very helpful to me in that regard, because one of the things that we can have, because as you just said, you don't know that at 11 the child lost her faith or his faith, and you can have terrible regret and beating yourself up about that later. And one of the things you said to me on the air, I think, and I tried it with my children, was that you can say something like, "I'm sorry about that, and I could have done a better job, but I'd like to do a good job now. If there's things you need now, I'd like to give them to you." And it really meant something to my children to hear that.
Yeah, kids, even, gosh, on the show, I remember we had I think it was, it was an 80-year-old caller, who wished that, their parents were still alive, because, this caller desperately wanted, his dad's approval still. Our kids never stop wanting, a relationship with us. Sometimes they can play hard to get, sometimes they can be obnoxious, but they never stop wanting to know that we love them and want to listen to them and respect them. And so, just being able to go to them and say, I did do the best that I could with what I had at the time, but I'm learning new things, just like you are too. And I, looking back on it, I wish I could have done this for you, and I didn't. And I'd sure love to give it to you now if you're open to it. And just being able to humanize ourselves. It's hard for kids to see their parents as real people too. At some point we kind of have to connect those dots for them and say, yeah, I know you suspected I wasn't perfect, but I need you to know that I know it too.
I know, it's funny. It's a funny little contradiction or a conundrum of children, is that they can tell you your faults and make your faults obvious to you, and even be quite brutal in describing your faults. But they still haven't come to grips with the fact that you're a human being. It's like, well, thanks for all of that.
You're just a malevolent pagan deity.
I know, but do you know that every other person has those same exact faults that you just mentioned? I'm not the only person that, occasionally, well, whatever. I want to let people, I want to remind folks right now, this month, we've got this 20 answers deal for you. 47 books in our 20 answers collection. You can get the whole collection for just over $1 a book and free shipping. 20 answers on all kinds of topics. A 20 answers book on Jesus, a 20 answers book on prayer, a 20 answers book on pick your moral issue, or pick your issue with other faith communities. All there, a great Catholic education in 47 books, each one of them with 20 answers in it. Each one just a little bit more than $1 right now, with free shipping at shop.catholic.com.
Hang on, we'll be right back with more Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Do you love sharing the gospel and want to learn to be more effective? Join the St. Paul Street Evangelization online School of Evangelization. You will learn to build bridges of trust and make disciples by befriending strangers, proclaiming the gospel, inviting people to the church, and praying with others. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you are unable to give, we'll give you a membership at no cost. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Want the latest pro-life news? Want it delivered? Sign up. It's free. EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your source for everything happening now in the fight to protect the sanctity of human life. New episodes delivered every week to your inbox. So if you really want to know,
sign up today.
Go to EWTN.com/pro-life today.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Hey, second hour, Carlo's going to be here. We're going to talk about purgatory. And if you are one among many who, no, I don't buy it. I don't buy the whole purgatory thing. We'd love to hear from you and have conversations with you about it. Maybe you do buy it, but you need some help understanding it or explaining it. Second hour, all about purgatory with Carlo Broussard, who he literally wrote the book on purgatory. 888-318-7884, our number. This hour, Dr. Greg Popcak with us. We're talking about the new book from Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak. It's called Having Meaningful, Sometimes Difficult Conversations with Your Adult Sons and Daughters. We all know that's what we want. A little help getting there. Didn't ever hurt anybody. We'll go now to Jean in Ohio. Jean, listening on the Alexa. Alexa, Jean, go ahead with your question for Dr. Greg Popcak.
Hi, I was just wondering, how do you turn your mind off, especially at night when you're trying to sleep and you wake up and you just think about all these things with your kids and what's going on, and you commit it to the Lord, but you pray about it and you pray about it, but then you still wake up thinking, oh my gosh, what about this? What about that? Are they okay? Did I do enough? Did I do too much? What am I doing?
Are we talking about adult kids here? Or are we talking about littler ones? Because parents do both.
Adult. Yeah.
Adults, yeah.
Yeah.
And tell me, are there specific things you're concerned with, or is it just in general?
Yeah, some in general, but I have to tell you, the youngest, he is 25, and then we have all the way up to almost 40, and there's been some challenges in their life, such as, I don't want to go into it, but they do have different challenges, and I'm like, okay.
And you worry about them.
I need, yeah.
What kind of, I mean, how often do you talk with them? What kind of contact do you have?
Well, we do. We have, pretty good, but then it's like
every day, every week, like just a sense of that.
No, like the daughter, she's in Indiana, and she unfortunately had a marriage breakup, and so then you just don't know, did I say too much, not enough, and she's going through some things, and then we have an adult son. Oh gosh. There's
a lot.
But
well, no, the reason
I
asked how often you're in touch with them is because when we don't have connection or as much connection as we might like or might need, our brains tend to fill in the gaps, right? Right, and so anxiety, and I talk about this actually in a different book I wrote called Unworried: A Life Without Anxiety. Anxiety is sort of what happens when our brain on the one hand says, I need to do something, and then immediately another part of our brain says, but there's nothing I can do. And then it goes, but I need to do something, but there's nothing I can do. But I need to do something, but there's nothing I can do. And you just sort of spin out at that point. And so, one of the reasons I asked about, how often you talk with them, because if you have regular contact with them, you can sort of you can write down, well, what do I feel like God is asking me to bring up the next time I talk to them? Or what's the next way I could reach out to be supportive to them? Or, and if you know that you're going to talk to them tomorrow, because you always talk to them on, Wednesday or Thursday, whatever, then that can help you kind of calm down a little bit. What I would suggest is that, this anxiety that you're having is sort of an invitation to try to reach out a little bit more. And especially, you were talking about your daughter who had the marriage breakup. This is a very painful thing for her, and she's looking for support where she can get it. And this is an opportunity for you to say, I don't really necessarily know exactly how to be here for you and what would be helpful, but I really want to be. And so, is it okay if I just kind of text you every day, or is it okay if I give you a call every couple of days, just to not necessarily, do a deep thing, but just see how you're doing and chat. The more, being able to have that connection around just these little things, that's how the friendship is built, and that allows us to then have a clearer sense of, well, what can I do, what shouldn't I do? The only other thing I'll throw out here is in the book, having meaningful and difficult conversations, because you were talking about the sort of the guilt thing. Did I do enough? Did I do it wrong? We talk about the difference between blame and responsibility. We tend to conflate the two and think they mean the same thing. But blame is where I sort of sit there and say, I screwed up. Clearly, I didn't give them enough of this, or I did that wrong, or they're mad at me about the other thing, and I'm a terrible parent, or whatever. That's blame, and that's really from the devil, because it doesn't point us in any kind of healthy direction. The Holy Spirit, when the Holy Spirit convicts us, even when He's convicting us for doing something wrong, He immediately points us to what we need to do instead. But when we're stuck in that powerless, place, that's a temptation from Satan. So responsibility instead is our ability to respond in a productive way to something, in a way that brings out the best in people. So my prayer, especially with my adult kids, is, Lord, help me know how to respond to them in ways that bring out the best in them. Help me to be my best and to respond to them in ways that bring out the best in them. So I'd like you to make that your prayer as well at night. So when you go to bed, if you're thinking about them, ask yourself, well, what's one small way I could reach out to them, and kind of make a plan for connecting with them about whatever. But in general, make that your prayer of how can I respond to them in ways, teach me to respond to them in ways that will bring out the best in them and in me as well.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
Right. Well, there you go.
Thanks, Gene.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you. Okay.
God bless you.
All right.
That's very pleasant to hear a conversation like that. Well, let me try to get as many as I can on here with Dr. Greg Popcak before we have to go. Let's go to Mike I'm going to guess that the call screener means Missouri, listening on 690 AM. Was that right, Mike?
I didn't hear where you said I was from. I'm in Waveland, Mississippi, and
Yeah, that's
I
right.
listen to Catholic
It is
Community
Mississippi.
Radio.
Okay.
On
All right. I thought.
AM 69.
Yeah. Okay, Mississippi, great. Mike, go ahead with your question for Dr. Popchak.
I have 3 children, 3 adult children. Only one of the 3 continues to practice her faith. I have a 44-year-old daughter who's single and a 40-year-old son who's married with a young boy. And I've addressed this matter with them repeatedly with an alarming lack of success in terms of falling away from the faith. And I'm obviously not doing it right because I haven't made any headway. But I'm just, what I'd like to do is get them to read, for instance, this book that you just put out, and say, well, how about reading that and see? I've apologized to both of them. I've admitted my lack of effectiveness in bringing them up as Catholics. I mean, they are both cradle Catholics, and they both went through religious parish school of religion. But when they reached the 11th grade, when they could have been confirmed, neither wanted to be confirmed then, and so.
Well, let me. I mean, so the book is really for the parents. I mean, because it's a parenting book, right? So I would say that I would, if you're interested in the book at all, I would start by you reading it because it really talks more about how you can reach out to them and start bridging those gaps. But in terms of, how do you begin to have conversations with them about it? I think the best thing to do for parents in your situation is not so much to talk to them about their faith, but the 2 things. What number one, when they talk to you, let's say they talk about, they had a rough day the other day because thus and such happened at work, or the kid was driving them crazy, or whatever it was. First you empathize with them. I'm really sorry that you went through that, and I wish I could be there for you to help you out with thus and such, or I wish I could make that all better for you. It's really frustrating as a parent to not be able to just make all these things go away from my kids. Lord, please bless my daughter and help her to know how much I love her, and please guide her in ways that I can't be there for her, and let her know that you love her. By the way, what's going on tomorrow? Right? So you see what I did there? I brought, I empathized with them. I let them know my real heart. It's not a technique, all right? I'm not suggesting this is, but you're really showing your heart and wishing that you could be there and expressing that. You're bringing Christ right into the middle of the conversation as if he was right there, present and part of the discussion, because guess what, he is, and you're acknowledging him through that little prayer, and then you're moving right on. You're not. So that's one way we witness to our kids. The other way is when they talk to us about something that they're going through, and we say, I really get it, because I remember when thus and such happened to me, and now for me, I had to turn to God in that, and he really showed up for me in these ways. I'm not sure what do you do? Whenever you're feeling that alone, and do you ever reach out to God, or what do you reach out to at those points? And maybe they say, you know what, Dad, I don't know. That's you, that's not me, and that's fine. But you've opened the door because you're talking about your experience. You're talking about your faith. You're talking about how God shows up for you. You have a couple of dozen of those conversations where you're describing how God really is showing up for you in your life and how he's been there for you in the past. You're witnessing in a very non-threatening way, because you're not telling them what they should believe. You're not telling them what they should think. You're showing them how God has shown up for you, and at least makes them think. Maybe there's something I'm missing. I wish I had the faith that Dad had. Even if they can't connect it, at least they're starting to think about it. So I think those 2 things off the top of my head are where I would start, and I do describe other ways to have these kinds of discussions and start bringing up faith issues in a non-threatening way, in having meaningful and sometimes difficult conversations with your adult sons and daughters. So check that out as a follow-up.
Follow-up question on the Word Among Us Press. Mm-hmm. You mentioned at the outset of the conversation this evening that you and Lisa have books that go from
infancy through adulthood.
To this. Are all those on the Word Among Us Press as well?
No. So all of our titles are available at CatholicCounselors.com, which is our main website. So we publish with several different publishers. So if you're interested in the other books, other titles, you can get this one as well as all of our titles at CatholicCounselors.com.
Thanks, Mike in Mississippi. Thank you very, very much. I especially like you ending this hour of the show with a question that allows us to give a little plug because that's what
checks in the mail, Mike. Thank you.
Having meaningful, sometimes difficult conversations with our adult sons and daughters out now from Greg and Lisa Popcak. Dr. Popcak, really and truly, I am a big fan of your work. I am so happy that in Catholic media we have someone mixing faith and reason in such a helpful, practical way for people.
Well, thank you, Simon. I really respect what you do, too, and thanks for allowing me to be here today.
Well, thank you. And all right, coming up next, Carlo Broussard. I can see him out there. He's ready to go. He's ready to talk about purgatory. You know you got questions about purgatory. Maybe you even have objections to purgatory. It's all welcome. We're going to have a full hour to talk about purgatory with Carlo Broussard, the author of Purgatory is for Real, right here on Catholic Answers Live, right after this. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Thanks again for being with us. We really appreciate that you take the time because we like doing it. Very happy to have you here. 888-318-7884 is our number. We're even happier when you call. 888-318-7884. There are various controversies within Christianity, and among them is purgatory. As a matter of fact, it's one of those funny kinds of controversies where it may be that non-Christian religions are closer than some of us Christians are to one another. That is, there are many non-Christian religions that believe in praying for the dead and that the dead undergo, some kind of process to make it where they're going to get to go. But we don't all agree on that within Christianity. Carlo wrote a book about it. Purgatory is for real. Good news about the afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. Carlo Broussard, our guest for this hour. You're welcome to call him, 888-318-7884. Thanks for coming, Carlo.
Hey, Cy. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Purgatory is for real has been out for a while now. I don't know. It's more than a year that it's been out,
yes,
I think.
It was September, I think, of 2019. It should say there in the title page.
Right.
The copyright date.
That was in the olden days, before everything shut down.
Actually, 2020. Okay, it was September 2020. Oh, yeah. So almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was confused.
But was so much positive feedback from people who said this really helped them to understand purgatory and get a sense of where the justifications for the belief in purgatory are,
sure,
and also how to think about purgatory.
That is correct.
So this hour we'll talk a bit about purgatory. We'll take anybody's call on purgatory. But when people come to you and say, I suppose, raise an objection, what are the main objections that they raise to purgatory?
Yeah, well, one of the main objections is that at least from our Protestant brothers and sisters, some will see in it an undermining of the sufficiency of Jesus' death on the cross.
Yes, yeah.
As if they see in the doctrine of purgatory the implication that Jesus' death on the cross is not sufficient enough, not powerful enough, not good enough to make us holy, and so we need this added extra thing of final purification to get holy before entering into heaven. But nothing could be further from the truth, because we do not profess the reality of purgatory based on the idea that Jesus' death is not enough, and so we need this added extra thing to get rid of any remaining debt of temporal punishment. Right? Because the church believes Jesus' death is sufficient enough to take away all debt of punishment, both eternal and temporal. In fact, the church teaches that the merits of Jesus' death on the cross are applied to us initially in and through baptism in its full capacity, such that all debt of punishment, both eternal and temporal, is remitted.
No matter how bad we've been.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is correct. So it is not a matter of whether Jesus' death is sufficient or not that determines the need of this final purification after death before entrance into glory. It's rather a matter of what is the order of providence that God willed and revealed to us. Because it could very well be such that God willed that once we receive the merits of Jesus' death on the cross in this complete way in the sacrament of baptism initially, it could be that after that initial stage of salvation and justification, no matter what sin a Christian commits post-baptism, that there would be no incurring of debt of punishment, whether eternal or temporal, right?
Right.
And specifically with regard to purgatory, temporal, the debt of temporal punishment due for a Christian after the initial stage of baptism. And that's precisely what some of our Protestant brothers and sisters will assert and say that, once you come to Christ, there's no more debt of punishment that's incurred after that initial stage of salvation. That's a possible order of providence that God could very well have created and willed.
Yeah.
But it's also possible that God could will it such that once somebody receives the merits of Jesus' death on the cross in that full way initially, all debt of punishment wiped away, and for whatever sins after baptism, even sins that do not turn us away from God entirely, mortal sin, but strain the relationship with God, venial sin, could still incur a debt of punishment, a displeasure or suffering due to the sinner. That's what we mean by the debt of punishment, but a suffering or displeasure due to the sinner that would not be eternal, but temporal, like it would have an end to it, okay? So the question is not whether Jesus' death is sufficient enough. The question is, which order of providence did God reveal to us?
Ah, fascinating.
Which order of providence did he set up?
Yeah.
And so we have to look to the evidence to decide which of these orders of providence God intended. And when we look at the biblical evidence, we see it's the latter, that God willed it such that even for Christians who are born again, who are saved, who have been initially incorporated into the mystical body of Christ and initially had all of the debt of punishment wiped away, we see in Scripture that it is still the case that God has willed for those Christians, when they sin, to still incur even a temporal debt of punishment that would have to be satisfied, or God could just simply remit it due to his mercy. And we see this, for example, in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 5 through 6, and I go into great detail in my book on this particular passage, because in that passage, the author of Hebrews tells us that the Lord disciplines his sons, the sons of his children, right? And chastises them, okay? So if we pause right there, we see that the author reveals they are children, that is, they're born-again Christians, they're saved, right? So they've had the full merits of Jesus' death on the cross applied to them initially. So they are children, but yet the Lord disciplines them and chastises them. And the Greek words that are used in verse 5 for discipline and verse 6 for chastise connote punishment, right? So the imposing of suffering on account of wrongdoing, right?
Yes.
A suffering that is due. So the author is revealing to us that even the children of God incur some suffering due to them. Because think about this, Si. God could not discipline his children or chastise them if it was not due to them. That would be cruelty. That would be an injustice, right? Just imposing pain and suffering for the sake of pain and suffering. God could only bestow that suffering and pain if there is a legitimate pain and suffering due to the child of his. And so the author is revealing to us that even justified born-again Christians still incur a debt of punishment that the Father imposes and remits by imposition of punishment upon his children. And of course, this could not be due to mortal sin because they're his children. So it must be some other kind of sin that's incurring a debt of punishment that is discharged when the punishment is imposed by God, when he's disciplining, quote-unquote disciplining, and quote-unquote chastising his children. And so what that reveals to us, Si, is that Christians can incur a temporal debt of punishment, and if that temporal debt of punishment is not discharged fully by the end of this life, then it must be in the afterlife before entering into heaven for the children of God, those who are saved, members of the elect. And Si, this in no way takes away from Jesus' death on the cross, because this is a part of God's revelation. This is how God set it up and willed how and the mode and the manner in which the merits of Jesus' death on the cross would be applied to us initially when we first come to him, and throughout the rest of the Christian life. And we don't know which way that's going to take place unless we look at the sources of revelation. And when we look at the sources of revelation, we see that the Catholic view is the correct view, and how God intends to apply the merits of Jesus' death on the cross to his children throughout their life until death.
We're talking Purgatory with Carlo Broussard. He's got this book, Purgatory is for Real. Good news about the afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. Your questions, your challenges, very, very welcome. 888-318-7884. Anybody can call if you'd like to know about Purgatory. If you'd like to maybe challenge us with a biblical passage or another interpretation, you're very welcome to do that as well. 888-318-7884. I say that with the full knowledge that if a challenge comes, I might have to do the difficult job of saying, Carlo, please address that challenge. 888-318-7884. Right back with your calls after this.
Stay with us for more Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
EWTN has its own official YouTube channel with tens of thousands of videos covering just about every conceivable topic of interest to Catholics. And, best of all, it's free. Every day, EWTN adds new TV shows, live events, devotionals, homilies, and specials to its YouTube channel. Visit the EWTN YouTube channel today. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Carlo's book, Purgatory is for Real, gives us our topic for the hour. We're talking purgatory. You're welcome to call with your questions, 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. And hey, we still have that free ebook. As a matter of fact, all this month we're going to have this available to you because January is the month of Roe v. Wade and all the reporting that goes with it. Why not be prepared to answer some of the questions that come up? Get our book, 20 Answers Abortion, for free as an ebook at shop.catholic.com. Shop.catholic.com. And free means free. It's not going to cost you anything. Just get it at shop.catholic.com. Our number, again, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. Maybe one of the most interesting things about purgatory, Carlo, is all the saints who have claimed to have visions of purgatory and seen and all the different things that have been written. Some of it is a bit florid in some cases. You know, like maybe you read a sermon about purgatory from the 19th century and you're like, whoa, man.
Right.
So when in your research, how did you deal with all of that history of purgatory?
Yeah, so in the book, I have a few examples of some mystical visions and experiences that some of the saints and mystics have had of the other side, right, of souls in purgatory. And I also recently, I guess some time ago, I recorded about a 75 minute talk on purgatory from the other side, which is going to be, I don't know if it's released yet or fixing to be released. And what you find there is sort of this gut-wrenching experience.
Yeah. Right.
Or, because they do recount their experience. The experiences are pretty gruesome, right? So like the horror and the intensity of the suffering that a soul is experiencing in purgatory when the soul comes and says to a mystic or to a saint, this is what I'm going through, sort of graphic visual details to convey the intensity of the suffering. You do find that. Yeah. That is present. And you find in these mystical experiences theological truths that map on with what the church officially teaches, namely simply that there is suffering. The mystical visions simply emphasize the intensity of the suffering, right? So it maps on with the church's teaching insofar that there is suffering, but the mystical visions add this added element of expressing the intensity. However, it is important to note that there are mystical experiences of some saints. I'm thinking of St. Catherine of Genoa, where they experience great happiness. They have mystical experiences of great joy and great happiness with regard to purgatory, which is important to keep in mind because that contextualizes sort of the negative elements of the experience of purgatory that mystics and saints is revealed to the mystics and saints. And that joy and the happiness, which is a joy and a happiness that we cannot possibly experience in this life because we're not guaranteed the absolute certitude. We don't have the absolute certitude that heaven is ours, whereas the souls in purgatory do. That joy and that experience contextualizes the suffering that is experienced, such that the suffering doesn't have the sting that it could possibly have without that joy and without that happiness. So there's a balancing act that's necessary to be done whenever we're sifting through all of these mystical visions and stuff. And so for our listeners, if they're interested, they can get the book and read a few of them, and then this forthcoming audio product that's going to be released by Catholic Answers Press, Purgatory from the Other Side, where I go into a little bit more detail. So it's been a while since I've done that research, so my memory is a little bit shallow on these details. But we have the products for it.
It's so interesting to me that there's a certain sense in which that kind of very high, elevated level of joy and knowledge and ever increasing closeness to God that purgatory is kind of, in a certain sense, you could say, well, the sufferings of purgatory, even if they are more horrible than the sufferings of this life, there's a way in which they're also more tolerable because of that other thing, is what you're saying.
Yes.
And then in many of those accounts, those florid accounts, they're emphasizing the suffering side of it.
Right.
And you think, well,
But that's only one part of the story.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm getting.
Just like in the book of Genesis, the author might emphasize only these 3 children of Adam and Eve, but that doesn't mean there are other children. There were not other children of Adam and Eve, right? So you have these mystical visions that focus on the intense suffering, but that doesn't mean that's the only part of the story. There's other parts of the story, such as the joy and the happiness that a soul can experience in the final purification of purgatory that we have to take into account in order to have a complete picture of purgatory. One that does come to mind, I pointed out in the book, is from the martyrdom of Perpetua and Felicity, which dates to about AD 203. And there Perpetua has a vision of her dead brother Dinocrates, or perhaps a vision, who's dirty and he's suffering. And upon waking, she prays for him. She immediately prays for him. And as I recorded in my book, whenever she sees Dinocrates, he's in a gloomy place, right? He's thirsty. He's filthy in countenance. He has this discolorization on his skin, and he also has a wound on his face, which was present there whenever he was living due to a disease, and he died very young. But after Perpetua prays for him, upon waking, she prays for him consistently. She says, "I made my prayer for my brother day and night, groaning and weeping that he might be granted to me." And then she has another vision, and she says, and she reports, Dinocrates had a clean body, he was well clad, and was finding refreshment. And then he went away from the water to play joyously, right? Because in the previous vision, he was trying to get water from this big container, which he could not get. But after the prayers, he was able to get the water and be refreshed. So what this reveals to us is not only that early Christians prayed for their deceased loved ones, but that they believed their deceased loved ones could be experiencing unrest and pain and suffering in the afterlife, and that their prayers could assist them in their pain and suffering and bring their afterlife pain and suffering to an end and bring them to refreshment.
What a beautiful set of images. And
yeah.
And it is images, but it's images that are really, our mind needs images, right?
Oh, sure.
We can't think without them.
That is correct. As St. Thomas Aquinas would say, we cannot think without the phantasms, which is the mental images that we're constructing in our imagination when we're thinking, because we need those visual things for the intellect to go to work on.
But what's communicated to her in those visions is you're helping your brother.
That's the reality. Brother is undergoing some sort of suffering. We can help. Perpetua realizes, I can help my brother through my prayers. And then, of course, throughout the Christian history and other mystical experiences, it becomes clear that much suffering for those in the afterlife are due to past forgiven sins. So they're suffering on account of wrongdoing in this life, which would map on with the Church's teaching that if there is a remaining debt of temporal punishment due for past forgiven sins, then that debt is going to be discharged via, in and through, the suffering that the soul experiences in purgatory.
Let's get to callers. So the number is 888-318-7884. Rebecca in Boise, Idaho, listening on Salt and Light Radio. Glad to have you, Rebecca. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you. I know so little bit about purgatory, and I know I'm supposed to fear hell, but should I be afraid of purgatory? Because I think we're all going to spend some time there because our souls aren't totally pure.
Okay. Yeah, very good question, Rebecca. So with regard to the latter part of your statement, that we will all experience purgatory, it is the church teaches that it is possible for us to bypass purgatory and immediately go to heaven. In paragraph 1472, Catechism teaches that it's possible to have such a fervent degree of charity that no final purification would remain. In other words, one can have such a fervent degree of charity that no remnants of sin would be remaining on the soul that would serve as impediments to immediate entrance into the beatific vision. So it's important to keep that in mind. It is not true that all of us will go to purgatory. It's possible for some to bypass purgatory. Have some bypass purgatory? Well, we don't really know for sure, but it's possible, right? So it's possible we won't have to go to purgatory. But to your particular question, should we fear purgatory? Well, I think there can be a healthy fear because there is a strong theological tradition, as I point out in my book, that the purification that the soul will undergo in purgatory involves a more intense suffering than any form of purification that we might undergo in this life. Purification in order to get rid of the remnants of past forgiven sins. Now, there's a variety of different opinions with regard to the level of intensity of that suffering, but there is this general consensus that, hey, for the most part, the suffering of purgatory is going to be more intense than the suffering in this life. So, as many theologians and saints have said throughout the tradition, it's better to work on those remnants of sin, like getting rid of those remnants of sin, and then through the grace of Jesus Christ in this life, and to strive for that fervent degree of charity such that when we die, there would be no impediments to immediate entrance into the beatific vision so that we could go straight to heaven. Because heaven is our goal, that's what we need to be striving for. The idea, and I also point this out in my book, the idea that we need to just strive to make it to purgatory, like I hope I get to purgatory, that's actually not the Catholic view. The Catholic view is heaven is our goal, and that's what I'm striving for, and I want it immediately. So I'm going to do whatever I can such that when I die, I can have that immediate entrance into heaven. But thanks be to God, due to God's mercy, if something happens I'm not in a condition such that I can go straight to heaven, I do have the final purification to get rid of any remnants of sin that I failed to get rid of in this life. So there's a healthy sense of fear of purgatory. I would be inclined to affirm that. But at the same time, Rebecca, as I mentioned to Cy earlier, there is a healthy sense of gratitude, right, for purgatory in case we do not die with all the remnants of sin taken care of in this life. And knowing that there will be great joy. It is not the joy of heaven. That's what we ultimately desire. But we can be grateful for the fact that there will be some joy in purgatory that even goes beyond the joys of this life. And that's a source of good news concerning the doctrine of purgatory. As the subtitle of my book says, purgatory is good news for good news about the afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. What do you think of that, Rebecca?
Well, just a little kind of caveat to that question is that when you talk about remnants of I guess, our sin, is things that, although we've been forgiven for when we do our reconciliation, but we haven't paid the price for that sin. Like, let's just use an example. It's like I stole a wallet from somebody. Then I in the future, I amended my ways, I confessed my sin, but still taking that person's wallet, I haven't paid for that sin. I'm committing that sin. So would that, I guess that would be what I could put in relation to it or something like that.
Right, or like,
to someone.
That is correct. Or my son hits the baseball in the backyard, breaks the neighbor's window. He goes, knocks on the door, says, "I'm sorry, I broke your window." Well, there's going to be something else left over, right? He needs to do maybe some yard work to try to earn a little money to contribute to the repair of the neighbor's window, right? That is a real-time, concrete application of making up for the sin. And so you are right, that is one aspect of the remnants of sin, right? This debt of temporal punishment, right? There is some displeasure due to the sinner. So for my young boy, there's going to be the displeasure of doing the yard work, right? So he's going to have to undergo that displeasure in order to have that debt of punishment discharged for him, such that he's no longer held accountable for helping repair the window. And the case that you brought up, that's right. We're going to have to undergo the displeasure of detaching from the wallet and giving it back to the person from whom we stole it, right? And so that's a way in which we can take care of those remnants of sin. And also, too, Rebecca, as the Catechism points out in paragraph 1472, one remnant of sin is unhealthy attachments to creaturely goods that incur from sin, and that's something that has to get purged in purgatory as well.
Hey, Rebecca, if you want to hang on, I'd be happy to send you a copy of Carlo's book, Purgatory is for Real, Good News About the Afterlife for Those Who Aren't Perfect Yet. Thanks very much for the call. More calls to come. You're welcome to call. A few lines open now, 888-318-7884.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Talking Purgatory this hour with Carlo Broussard, who wrote the book on Purgatory. Purgatory is for real. Good news about the afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. You're welcome to call with your question or your inquiry or your maybe challenge. 888-318-7884. We're going to Roman now in Nebraska. Roman, you there with us? No, Roman's not there. All right. I'll come back to you, Roman. Hang on. I suppose probably it seems to me there's some kind of purgatory joke I should be able to make about that, but I got nothing. Mary in Indiana, you're up next. Are you there with us, Mary?
Yes, I have a question about the afterlife.
Lay it on us.
Okay. I'd like to know if the apostolic pardon removes all temporal suffering unconditionally, or are there other requirements like no attachment to sin, as is the case with other kinds of indulgences?
Yeah, so because the apostolic pardon is a plenary indulgence, right, with the apostolic blessing is attached with this, a plenary indulgence, the condition would be that the person has to be properly disposed by being in the state of grace. So they're going to have sanctifying grace, but like it is with regular plenary indulgences, an element of that proper disposition would also involve not being attached to sin, even venial sin, in order for the full plenary indulgence to take effect. And this is, as many of our listeners know, the apostolic blessing that's imparted to those who are dying. But if a priest cannot be present, and not if one cannot have a priest to administer the apostolic pardon, the church does grant a plenary indulgence to one who is dying if they are properly disposed, right, with sanctifying grace, not attached to venial sin, all of the other conditions, and also to if they've had confession, right, within so many days before that experience, their experience of death, and also communion and prayers for the Pope's intentions. So, if a priest cannot be had, if the other conditions are met by the individual, the plenary indulgence still can be granted by the church to the individual who is dying, but with the priest and the apostolic blessing, the proper disposition of having sanctifying grace, being detached from sin, even venial sin, would be a necessary requirement for that apostolic blessing to take place and full debt of temporal punishment be remitted for the individual. And so this is a way in which the church is bestowing her mercy upon her children, bestowing the mercy of God upon her children, exercising her rightful authority to have a way in which a debt of suffering due to the sinner can be remitted through the indulgence without having to undergo the suffering. And so this is something that we as Catholic sides should rejoice in, of the great mercy that Mother Church is showing us and that God is showing us through the church to have ways in which the debt of punishment can be remitted without the punishment. And that is something that God has the prerogative to do in and through the legitimate authority of the church. And so what a blessing. That's like the neighbor, when my son breaks a window, says, "I'm sorry," and the neighbor says, "Don't worry about it." And I'll say, "Okay, well, here's some money. My son, I took $10 out of your piggy bank or whatever, and I'll try to give it to the neighbor," and the neighbor says, "Man, don't worry about it," right?
Yeah.
There is a legitimate debt of payment due, but the neighbor is within his rightful place to say, "No, I remit the debt. No need to pay." And that's what the indulgence is, whether it be partial or plenary, which simply signifies full remission of debt of temporal punishment.
Okay, Mary?
Can I listen to this again?
Oh, yeah.
For someone else? How do you listen to this again?
Okay,
you
well,
couldn't hear it all.
They post it on our website at Catholic.com right after the show, and it's also, even right now, you could go to our, YouTube and just back it up a little bit and listen, because it goes live onto YouTube, and it stays there. So there's a couple options for you.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mary.
Bye.
Bye. Let's try Roman again. See if we can get Roman in Nebraska. Roman, you there with us?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can hear you very well, Roman. Go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Yeah. Well, first I'm going to go. That last one, that Mary, that was making me come back because my wife passed away on the 4th of July.
Oh, I'm sorry, Roman.
And, yeah, but she had all her blessings. Yeah, we were together like 56 years.
Oh,
anyways, between, well, we put on the headstone, pray to St. Joseph for a holy death. But, yeah, Father came in and on the Friday right before she couldn't respond anymore, heard her confession, gave her the apostolic blessing.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes, and then a priest that we had several years ago come back and he had the funeral. He says, "We'll still say masses. We can always go for somebody else." But yeah, she should have went straight to heaven. But my question was, when the granddaughter was back from Arizona for the funeral, it got brought up on the way taking her to the airport. If you believe in, I don't know how it come about purgatory, but she says, well, purgatory, if Jesus died, why is there a purgatory? I says, if Jesus wouldn't have died, I was going to make sure I told her right, because she never responded, and I haven't seen her now since, once they were here for the funeral. I told her, well, if Jesus wouldn't have died, we wouldn't have any chance for purgatory. And then I explained to her, like you were explaining, you have to pay the debt. So I was just making sure I was on the right track telling her that.
Yeah, Roman, you are correct in saying, without Jesus' death, in a sense, without Jesus' death, there would be no purgatory, in the sense that, given the revelation that we have in this order of providence, it is Jesus' death that is the key to unlock the doors of heaven, right? So it is Jesus' death that unlocks the doors of heaven, makes heaven possible. Given that heaven is possible for humans to enter into, well, that brings up the whole question of, will a soul be perfectly ready for heaven when the Christian dies? And of course, that's going to bring up the question of, are there remnants of sin, any sort of defilement on the soul that's not worthy of eternal damnation, but not worthy of heaven too? And so therefore a need for final purification. So in one sense, without Jesus' death, we would not have this opportunity for final purification before heaven. But also too, without Jesus' death, there would be no purgatory, in the sense that it is the merits of Jesus' death on the cross that are applied to us when we are undergoing the final purification to take care of the remnants of sin. Because it is that grace and mercy won for us by Jesus on the cross that is applied to the soul in this final purification. Just like when debt of punishment is remitted initially when I come to Christ and incorporated into the mystical body of Christ. For Catholics, we understand that to be ordinarily through baptism. It is because of the death of Jesus on the cross by which we are able to have debt of punishment removed entirely in and through baptism. So too, whenever debt of temporal punishment is remitted for us as Christians, whether in this life or in the afterlife of purgatory, it is because of the death of Jesus Christ. It is the death of Jesus Christ that is the cause of the possibility, right, of having this debt of temporal punishment removed, because Jesus came to forgive sins. And to forgive sins in and through the death of Jesus on the cross also involves forgiving us of the debt of sin, right? And so it is true to say that because of Jesus' death on the cross, we have purgatory. And then also the second point you said, paying the debt of temporal punishment, you are correct. But note this, Roman, the debt of taking care of the debt of temporal punishment due for past forgiven sin is only one aspect, one remnant of sin that could possibly be due to the soul or on the soul. Because there's also, as I mentioned this before the break, I don't know if you were listening, Roman, but another remnant of sin is unhealthy attachments to created good. So whenever we sin, we're turning to a creaturely good in a disordered way, and that develops an inclination within the soul toward that good. But because it's outside of God's divine design and order, that inclination is disordered. So it's a disordered inclination to the good, hence what the Catechism calls an unhealthy attachment to that creaturely good. And such an unhealthy attachment has to get rectified, has to get purged, has to get purified. If it is not entirely purified in this life, well then, in the afterlife before entrance into heaven. So the debt of temporal punishment is one remnant of sin, but we also have this other remnant of sin, namely the unhealthy attachments to created goods, which would be something that might very well be purified in the final purification of purgatory.
Roman, I think a fun thing would be, since you had this conversation with your granddaughter, maybe when you see her again, you want to give her Carlo's book. So I'd be happy to send it to you. Remember that conversation we had about purgatory? Here's a book. Maybe
leeway. Yeah.
Interested. It's called Purgatory's for Real. Roman, if you'd like it, hang on the line. We got to take a break. We'll take that break right now. Lots more calls. We'll try to get to everybody before we finish today. Right back after this with your questions about purgatory.
You're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The World Over with Raymond Arroyo. Coverage as seen through a Catholic lens.
All people of faith and sincerity need to awaken to this and protect this fundamental right of religious liberty.
Expert analysis.
Does Revelation judge history, or does history judge Revelation?
Stories vital to people of faith.
It's part of our faith that comedy and tragedy naturally go hand in hand.
Delivered to your inbox every week. Sign up today. Go to EWTN.com/worldover.
A lot of people think that street evangelization involves yelling out of a bullhorn telling people that they're going to hell. Not so with St. Paul's Street Evangelization. Our methods are non-confrontational and effective. We simply offer information on the Catholic faith along with rosaries, miraculous medals, and prayer. Pope Francis wrote about how beautiful it is to see street preachers joyfully bringing Jesus to every corner of the earth. Street evangelization is fun and fruitful. Join us today at streetevangelization.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Want to know about purgatory? This is your hour. Carlo Broussard, the author of Purgatory is for Real, Good News About the Afterlife for Those Who Aren't Perfect Yet, is here as our guest. And on the line we have Inez in Portland, Oregon, listening on the great Modern Day Radio. Inez, go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Yes, I have a devotion to pray to the poor souls in purgatory. And my question is, when we do pray for them, do they know who's praying for them?
Okay, well, the answer, Inez, is, first of all, it's important to point out the Church has no definitive position on this, and so we can't appeal to some sort of infallible teaching to answer the question. However, there is a strong theological tradition that provides a reasonable answer to the question, and that it is reasonable to say that they do, that they are aware of the prayers that we offer for them, and also we can say that they would be aware of our needs and aware of the requests that we make of them in asking them to pray for us, because they are still members of the mystical body of Christ. And the Catechism even hints at this in paragraph 958, if my memory serves me correctly here. The Catechism says that our prayers for them make their prayers for us, their intercessions for us, more effective. So notice the implication that they pray for us. And if they are praying for us, that would seem to imply, Inez, that they are aware of our needs and aware of us in as much as they are praying for us. So aware of us and our needs, but also it's reasonable to think that they would be aware of the prayers that we offer for them, because God is applying those prayers to them, making it contribute somehow to their limiting or ending their final purification. And it's reasonable to think that God would make them aware of that, given the union that we have with them in and through the mystical body of Christ, which is established, that union is established by the bond of charity. So the bottom line, Inez, is that the strong theological tradition is yes, they would be aware of the prayers we offer for them, and they would be aware of the requests that we make of them, asking them to pray for us.
Inez, how's that?
Sometimes I hear like 2, sometimes 3 masses a day for the souls in purgatory. My local pastor told me that 1 should be enough, and that it's redundant to keep hearing masses. And to me, I want to be there, and now I want to offer my mass for and save as many souls as possible.
Sure. Well, I mean, so there's like a partial truth to what he's saying, in that 1 Mass is sufficient and has the power in and of itself, right, to bring to an end the final purification of a soul in purgatory. But sometimes God might not will that to happen. God may very well will that there be a perseverance of constant offering of masses for a particular soul to bring about at the end of that particular soul's final purification. So personally, Inez, I don't see any harm, unless we're getting scrupulous and like superstitious with the offering of masses. So assuming that that's not a problem, and we're legitimately doing it out of love, to engage in an act of love in praying for the dead, because remember, Inez, that's a spiritual work of mercy. And whenever we're legitimately pursuing holiness and it's motivated by love, I'm sure my wife's not going to be offended if I tell her I love her and perform acts of love for her consistently throughout the day. Now, of course, if I'm being annoying with it, like, I love you, 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 that's going to, get away from me, right? But if it's sincere and it's reasonable, right, then she's going to say, bring it on, right?
Yeah.
And so I think the same applies here because whenever we offer a mass for the holy souls in purgatory, that is an act of love. And if we're doing it out of love, motivated by love, if it's reasonable and we're not being scrupulous about it, then it can be legitimate. So perhaps maybe take what your pastor is telling you and think about that, reflect upon your own self. Are you being scrupulous about it? Or are you doing it legitimately out of love? And of course, if your pastor's saying knock it off, well, then maybe cut back to offering one Mass for the Holy Souls a day, right?
Yeah.
Because at the same time, we want to try to navigate those waters appropriately in our relationship with our pastor.
Okay, Nez?
Actually, I kind of ignored what he told me, and I continue hearing Masses, there's one Mass after another, so I just stay there, and I want to save as many souls as possible.
Well, Inez, one thought that came to mind is there's nothing wrong with you going to Mass 3 times a day and praying for the holy souls in purgatory, right? That in no way, should we negate, right? So if you want to go to Mass 3 times a day and pray for the holy souls in purgatory 3 times a day, offering the Mass personally and individually, go right on ahead and do it, right? But I was working on the assumption that, you're asking the pastor himself to offer the Mass in a particular way for the holy souls in purgatory. If that is what's taking place, then you might want to discern how often you're going to be requesting him to offer the Mass for the holy souls. But if it's just you in a private manner, I personally don't see any problem with that as long as we're not being scrupulous about it and it's motivated by true charity.
Inez, thanks. Lots and lots on the line, so I'm going to keep moving. Eric in Detroit is listening on the EWTN app. Eric, we're glad to have you. Go ahead with your question for Carlo.
Hi. It's an honor to talk to you guys. I've always just listened. My question.
Well, that's a nice thing to say, Eric. Thank you.
It's an honor. It's an honor.
I feel important.
Well, I want to hurry up and get through it. I know you have a big line. There's a lesson I learned a while ago, and I can't remember which saint or which teaching of the church kind of reiterated it. We want to start offering our sufferings to pay our debt of justice now in this life, rather than wait for purgatory. I remember Mother Angelica's got this cute thing. You don't want to aim for purgatory. You want to aim for heaven.
Amen.
And I can't remember the thing, but I think it's so important to get that message that people get afraid of purgatory. And really, in reality, we don't have to wait for suffering. It's going to happen.
Right.
But we need to really focus on, okay, this is happening. I'm going to offer this up for whatever debt of sin that I may have, or debt of justice I have for my forgiven sins. And then anything else, I asked Mary and Joseph and to offer it up to Jesus and say, if it can't be used for that, then use it where it will be used the best.
No, Eric.
So I can't remember.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I thought you were finished. I apologize for talking over you. No, you're spot on, Eric, because once we understand the reality of the remnants of sin that incur from sin, even though the guilt of sin is remitted through the sacrament of reconciliation or repentance, and understanding how in this life we can do things to take care of those remnants of sin, of purging unhealthy attachments, right? And which would come through penitential acts of abstaining from the indulgence of certain creaturely goods in order to reorder our will toward that good in a proper and healthy way. With regard to the debt of temporal punishment, voluntarily motivated by charity, imposing upon ourselves some form of displeasure, ordering it toward discharging remaining debt of temporal punishment due for sin, or voluntarily accepting with love whatever displeasure and suffering that happens to be occurring in my life and offering it up to God for the sake of discharging any remaining debt of temporal punishment due for sin. So that is the Christian life. that's one of the elements of the Christian life and growing in holiness in this life. And so once we understand that and we say, oh, well, wait a minute. Okay, so if purgatory is dealing with these remnants of sins, but I know I can deal with them in this life, well, then I can, quote unquote, as people often say, work out my purgatory now, so to speak, right? And hopefully be able to die with such a fervent degree of charity that there are no remnants of sin remaining when I die, such that when I die, I can go straight into heaven. So, Eric, you are definitely on the right track in your thinking there.
Great. Yeah, and I just couldn't remember which saints had reiterated it, or if they had some other,
If that's your...
As a post-abortive father, I wrote a book, chronicling the grief and going through that grief.
Oh, wow.
I really offered all the grief and the things that I've been going through, because I know that psychological healing does not always follow upon spiritual healing through grace.
Right. That is correct.
Father Groeschel said that. So as that healing occurred, I think it's just starting with the morning prayer, and quite honestly, it sustained my entire life.
Oh, beautiful.
Wow. What I went through. So.
Wow, Eric, well, God bless you, brother, and praise be Jesus for the grace and his mercy in giving you that grace in order to make that transition and develop and grow in that conversion and that holiness.
And thank you, too, for your kind words.
Yes.
Eric, I'm going to move quick, try to get everybody on if I can. Pete in Boise, Idaho, watching on YouTube. Go ahead, Pete. No, Pete? All right, Pete. I'll try to come back to you, Pete. Hang on. Let me see who I'm going to. Instead, we'll go to Scott in Irving, Texas, listening on 9:10 a.m. Scott, are you there with us? Hello, Scott? What's up? What's up, everybody? Oh, I think...
Are you pressing the wrong buttons?
I did with Scott. Okay, I didn't on the first one, but Scott, I apologize. Go ahead with your question for Carla.
You can hear me, right?
Yeah, you sound great. That was just me.
Good to know. Listen, my question is it possible to prove that purgatory exists, or is it just a theory?
Is it just a theory? The answer would be no. From a Catholic perspective, this is because the Church has infallibly taught it. So we would know that it is not just a theory based upon the infallible authority of the Church established by Jesus Christ. But we can also look to sacred Scripture to see that purgatory is a reality. So, for example, in 1 Corinthians 3:11 through 15, and I have a whole section in my book on this passage in particular, where St. Paul is describing the day of judgment, which according to the author of Hebrews 9:27, comes after death. A Christian is standing before Christ on the day of judgment, having his works tested. And some of those works, if they be wood, hay, or straw, which represents not so good works, but not mortal sins, because this is a Christian on the day of judgment, somebody who's built upon the foundation of Jesus Christ. If those works be burned up, St. Paul says the individual, the Christian, will suffer loss, suffering loss on account of those not so good works. But nevertheless, Paul says that the Christian will be saved, but only as through fire. So the fire, the works being tested by the fire, and the Christian going through the fire signifies that the Christian is undergoing a purification on the day of judgment such that the individual is saved. But notice that this postmortem state of existence cannot be heaven because the individual is suffering on account of the sins represented by the wood, hay, and straw. But it cannot be hell either because Paul is clear that this is a Christian who's built upon the foundation of Jesus, and the Christian will be saved as only through fire. So the only intelligible explanation of this postmortem state of existence is what we call purgatory. This postmortem final purification of one who has died in friendship with Jesus, but yet has not attained the perfect holiness necessary for the beatific vision yet. And that's in 1 Corinthians 3:11 through 15.
And as you can hear the music, we got to leave it there. Sorry I wasn't able to get to everybody, but perhaps another day. Carlo's book, Purgatory is for Real. Good news about the afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. It's available at shop.catholic.com. Good one to share with anybody you might know who's got those questions about purgatory. Maybe it's you. Purgatory is for real. Good news about the afterlife for those who aren't perfect yet. Shop.catholic.com. Thank you, Carlo.
Hey, thank you, Si. I had a blast, man.
Yeah, that was kind of fun.
Indeed it was.
I only pushed one wrong button, too. I feel like that's a triumph when I only do
Amen,
one
brother.
wrong button in an
You're
hour.
on your way, Si.
I know. I'm going to be good at this pretty soon. Pretty soon I'll be good at this. See you tomorrow, God willing, right here, Catholic Answers Live.